What's going on, everybody? Welcome and welcome back to the channel. Today, I'm going to be talking about humanism and how, as time goes on, I feel like I'm becoming less and less confident in compartmentalized activism. And I think I'm just going to start advocating for the betterment of human culture and just being humans in general. And while still being aware of nuance, I'm going to try to put that to the side and just try to be a decent fucking human being. Let's talk.
I don't do regrets. I'm trying to learn from my lessons, but do I get it yet? I want to set an example, but I'm not sure I can handle all my demons. I'm thinking that I should court a vet. I fight for all respect. I'm working overtime to keep in my head. I understand I'll get the love when I'm dead, so my focus is red. Choose the black out on what's keeping me chosen. I've been the token, now the back is ahead. On my soapbox chucking.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome and welcome back to the channel. This is Georgia, Carolina, your gated and discrimination-free community where we personalize culture and entertainment and then curate a conversation that's based on self-discovery and growth. I am your pop culture coordinator of all things inclusion and awareness, Jordan Renee, and I'm happy to have you back for another video. All right, everybody. So today we're going to be talking about humanism and how I feel like I have lost all faith in compartmentalized activism. And all may be a strong operative word here, but I do feel like I am losing faith in fighting for individual communities versus just fighting for the equal treatment and the equal betterment of humans as a whole. Let me explain to you why. Because I am somebody, as you guys know, if you're returning to Georgia, Carolina, you know that my channel is based on the safe space to advocate and speak out against injustice, against all minorities, all injustice, all situations where people are being oppressed, right? And I think that the more that I go along and the more that I continue to do these videos, the more that I continue to speak out on the internet and get a farther reach than just the local people who are around me that see things the same way that I do, I'm starting to realize that maybe I, as an activist, am just infringing upon people's comfortable spaces. And sometimes people just want to be left alone. Do you get what I mean? I'm starting to feel like Black people don't want to be advocated for. I'm starting to feel like Black people don't want to take accountability for their part in their own advancement. Do you get what I'm saying? I can say the same thing about the queer community and how a lot of these individual minority communities that we are interacting with, they operate within this crabs in a barrel mentality, and they would much rather fight each other to get to a space where they feel like they are individually progressing than lift each other up as a community and as a whole and strive to get there as a community, right? It becomes frustrating when communities want you to advocate for them in the ways that they deem fit, but yet they cannot be held to reproach, or they cannot be given constructive criticism on their own behaviors because they're victims or because they are the oppressed. And because they are the oppressed, now all of a sudden they are above any type of restructuring of their own behavior. And I think that that is counterproductive, and I think that it's toxic because, prime example, the whole Will Smith slapping Chris Rock thing, I made a bunch of videos talking about how I don't understand how Black people cannot think of a better way to handle this than reducing themselves to violence. Do you get what I mean? And before we even get into senseless Black on Black crime, let's talk about the violence that Black people instill within their own that is duly unnecessary. How about when the Black community wants the entire race to come out and stand for them, march for them, when somebody who appears to be under the guise of their acceptance is being mistreated, yet that same community has nothing to say when their own, typically Black men, are murdering Black trans women? No one ever says anything about that. What happened to Women Are for Women? Why don't cis Black women advocate for Black trans women being murdered? Let's talk about it, people. Like, I keep seeing people encourage physical violence between Black people and between Black men and between people because they feel like, okay, well, he was wrong, so this is an appropriate course of action. Yet, if anybody else makes a case against you being wrong, then all of a sudden now anything like the circumstantial nuance of that can play against you so quickly that I don't think that people take time to think enough about the repercussions of encouraging violence. Like, I don't think that people understand that. And what is more saddening to me is that Black people refuse to come up with a better way of handling this situation. Like, there is no other way that you can handle yourselves except violence, yet you want white people to stop labeling you under Black on Black crime. Yet you can't think of a better way to handle your issues. That is so pathetic to me. It's so stupid. Same thing with queer people. How do you expect us to advocate and stand up for gay rights when gay people don't stand up for trans people? And mind you, when I say all of this, I'm not speaking in full stereotypes and full generalities. I'm just speaking on the fact that there are enough people subscribing to this narrative that it becomes a stereotype. There's enough people subscribing to the stereotype that Black on Black people, like Black people do not support each other, that it is a thing. There are enough people supporting the narrative that Black people are nothing but violent to make it a stereotype. There are enough people within the queer community who turn their backs on trans people just so they can advocate themselves as gay people that it becomes a thing. And so I find it hard for me to spread myself thin and ingratiate myself into these separate communities who at the end of the day want to be left to their own devices, but they want the rights that they feel are adequate for them. But they don't want to represent themselves in the ways that are viable for all people. Prime example, let's mix it up for a second. Let's talk about gay white men and gay white people who will choose their white privilege over their LGBT community any day of the week. How many times do you see white people claiming they love BBC so much, but then at the same time, they will sit here and scream Blue Lives Matter? Think about it. Like, it seems like a lot of minorities only want equality in the ways that benefit them, but they don't want to bring anything to the table. Do you get what I'm saying? Should equal rights just be equal? Absolutely. But at the end of the day, you can't fight against stereotypes when you choose to subject yourselves to them. You can't fight against police brutality if you are constantly engaging yourselves in moments. Prime example, you can't fight against police brutality and advocate for the murder of Black trans women. Message. How do you expect anybody to respect you if you don't respect yourselves? And I think that that's the part that these minorities are not understanding when it comes to my videos specifically. I'm not saying that you have to make yourselves look a certain way to other people for them to respect you. No, what I'm saying is that you should care more about what you are representing to yourselves. You should care more about what you're teaching the children who are coming up in your community. You should care more about how you look and how you're influencing other people, regardless of what anybody outside of your own community says. I said this before. This ain't white people's business. We need to give a fuck about how we look to ourselves. Just like queer people, this ain't straight people's business. We need to talk about how we look to each other and how we interact with each other. There's a notorious rift between gay men and trans people. There's a notorious rift between cis women and trans women. There's a notorious rift between Black people and white people. There's a notorious rift between gay people or Black gay people and straight gay people. Like, at the end of the day, we need to learn how to come together within our own community so that we can advocate for the betterment of our entire environment instead of just fighting for the people who we deem to be worthy. Do you get what I'm saying? Because who is giving these people the power to decide that queer people aren't worthy of the protection of the Black community? I guess it's the same people who decided that Black people weren't worthy of the protection of the white community, right? Who is deciding that trans women aren't worthy of the protection of the Black community? I guess the same community that is sitting here saying that trans women aren't women and that if you deal with a trans woman, you're gay. Like, at the end of the day, we have to hold ourselves responsible and not just the people who are antagonizing and oppressing us. We have to hold ourselves accountable because at the end of the day, I feel like there is not enough work being done within the inner structures of our community and only focus being put on how other people are treating us. I don't think that there is enough focus and there's not enough practice put onto how we treat each other. Because we will sit here and say that not all Black people look alike. Not all Black people come in the same packaging. Not all queer people come in the same packaging. We're not a monolith. We're not a monolith. But yet, the way that people advocate for their own communities seems like they're only operating in monolithic structures. It seems like Black people only operate for cis Black people, cis straight Black people. It seems like the queer community advocates for gay white men first, and then everybody else falls under that totem pole. Do you get what I mean? With women, advocating for women's rights, it's always white women, and then Black women, and then trans women are left out of the conversation. At the end of the day, we need to be humans. We need to operate within a humanist structure instead of just trying to operate like it's these different communities fighting for their own individual advocacies is great and it makes sense and there's nuance and there's reasoning for it. But at the end of the day, there is no reason why we cannot come together and also just work for the betterment of ourselves as humans, right? But that can't happen until we within our own individual communities come together and decide to do better for ourselves. Period. Like, if Black people can't decide to be better to Black people, then we can't ask white people to be better to us. If queer people can't be better to trans people, and if queer people can't be better to fellow queer people, then we can't ask straight people to be better to us. If women can't be better to themselves, then we can't ask for equality from men. And I think that this is going to piss a lot of people off, but at the end of the day, I'm right. Because if we keep breaking down these structures and keep breaking down these communities and breaking down these groups into these individualized communities, at the end of the day, we're going to miss the fact that we are all human beings and that we all deserve to be treated and handled accordingly. We're all human beings. So while I do understand the necessity to have ourselves labeled as Black women, trans women, this and the third, at the end of the day, the labels are not doing anything but creating more divisiveness in the long run. I think that operating from a humanist perspective is going to help us eradicate a lot of the interstructural issues that are happening within these nuanced communities and give us a better platform and foundation for us to come together and as a human race, right? I think that we are so busy fighting for such individualistic plights that we are not coming together as people and realizing that a lot of us are going through the exact same things. We just have different labels put on them. There's a lot, like, cis women go through a lot of the same issues that Black women go through, or cis women go through the same issues that trans women go through. Gay men go through a lot of the same issues that trans people go through. Straight people go through a lot of the same issues that gay people go through, but at the end of the day, we are so stuck on these individualistic labels that we cannot come together as people. Gay Black men and straight Black men go through the same thing. Cis Black women and trans Black women go through the exact same things to a certain extent. Mind you, plights are different based on the communities. We all know that Black trans women are out here being murdered just for existing. But on the flip side of that, cis Black women are also being murdered by the men who are bringing them home diseases with down low culture. So is one really better than the other? Murder is murder, right? Wrong is wrong, right? So when are we going to stop individualizing plights and start just understanding that wrong is wrong and that we need to come together as a people and just be fucking people? Because it's starting to feel like there is no community left. It seems like there's only labels, and if you fit under that label, then you can fit into that protest when it's time to advocate for that group. But there is no all Black people. There is no all queer people. There is no all women. These are just the examples that I fall under. These are just the category groups that I fall under. So I'm speaking for myself as a Black woman, as a trans woman, as a queer person who advocates for all of these communities and more. I think that if we start operating from a humanist perspective, I think that we can stop getting out of our own way and start advocating for other people as well. Just like my video about Jimmy Kimmel and BTS. I'm not Asian. I'm not Korean. But I recognize that as a Black person, racism is wrong. And henceforth into that, I learned about xenophobia. Because I care enough about people being treated as equal people to learn that not only was what Jimmy Kimmel was doing racist, it was also xenophobic because they're from another country. Right? So let's break that down to a more relatable perspective. Black people, are you going to not hold a Haitian woman in community with you all because she's Haitian and not American? She's still Black. Do you get what I mean? Like, where does the line come in on separating these individualized groups, and where does the net come in of all of us being humans? I'm starting to think that the further we operate from a solely compartmentalized activism standpoint, I feel like the more that we're just going to separate groups of people as people. And I think that there needs to be some sort of focus put on humanized activism and overall congruency of culture.
Because I think what I'm trying to say is that if we just focus on humans being humans, that we're going to recognize that everybody is equal and that nobody deserves to be treated wrong based on skin color, sexual orientation, gender identity, or anything of the like. And so if we start focusing on humanism as an overarching form of treating people, then maybe we'll actually acknowledge and eradicate all of the things that fall under that. All discrimination will get eradicated if we start operating from humanism. I'm just saying.
Right? In saying that, do I feel like there is a necessity to stand on your individualized nuances, people? Yes, because we have spent so many years in these systemically oppressed situations that the reason why a lot of us can't get to this humanist perspective is because we have always been discriminated against as Black people, as queer people, as trans people, as women, as whatever the third. The same labels that we are now fighting for the betterment of were the same things that we were brought down as, right? So do I think that emphasis on those things is important? Yes. But do I think that that is the sole goal? No. I do think that there needs to be emphasis placed on us as Black people, us as trans people, us as queer people, us as women, us as whatever the case may be. But those things should be umbrella situations. Those things should be individualized situations under the umbrella of overall human advocacy. Y'all means all. Like, when are we gonna start realizing that we're all people, right? I think that coming to a humanist mindset can also help us restructure some of that individualized discrimination. But it starts from an individual perspective. Like, we have to start within ourselves. We can't go out and expect the government to change its mind on something that we still haven't changed our mind on within our own communities. We got to start, like, change starts at home. So it starts within yourself. It starts with you being a good person to yourself and being a good person. It starts with parents embracing their queer children. It starts with, it just starts at home. It starts with yourself first. It starts with you making sure that you are the best version of yourself so that you can go out and treat everybody as their individual best selves. If we come to the table as our individual best selves and making sure that we are doing everything we can to present ourselves as the most functioning people in society, then that will help us take ourselves out of our own experience and relate to other people. Put yourselves in somebody else's shoes. Take yourselves out of your own perspective for just a second. I understand that all plights and all things of this nature are valid, but I think that we don't take enough time to recognize that other people are people too. And the other people are going through things. We are not the only one going through something. We are not the only one with a problem. We are not the only one with a plight. We are not the only ones that are going through things. And never will that be an excuse for somebody to take take those issues out on somebody or using their plights as a device to be discriminatory. No, that's not what I'm saying. But if we take the time to have a little more understanding of each other as people, I think that it will help us subconsciously not be discriminatory towards other people when we don't have the intention on being. Let's just start from the smallest perspective possible. Unintentional discrimination. Let's start there. Check ourselves. Because just like RuPaul says, how you gonna love somebody else if you can't love yourself? How the hell you gonna check somebody else if you can't check yourself? Who gonna check me, boo? It better be you. You better check you. Because people get so offended when other people check them or put them on notice or put them on game to the shit that they're doing, but then they don't take the time to step outside of themselves to realize that the way that they conduct themselves may be offensive to somebody else. Impact is always going to override intention. So whether you intend to be discriminatory, whether you intend to be offensive, whether you intend to be blah, 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 at the end of the day, if it comes off that way, then it is. All you have to do is recognize your part in that, make amends for it, and move on. But it seems like nobody wants to acknowledge the plight of anybody else until their plight is fully rectified. And I think that that is counterproductive to the overall structure of humanism. I think that that is counterproductive to the overall goal of what we really want, is for everybody to be treated and created as equals. And if you can't step out of yourself to see the plight of somebody else until you feel like you've been made whole, then we're never going to get anywhere, because everybody got a problem. Everybody's going through something. Everybody has feelings. Everybody has shit that they're going through that's harming them. That's hurting them, right? So if none of us are able to step outside of our own shit long enough to do what is right, then none of us should be expecting any progress. None of us should be wanting anything. And I'm starting to think that we are just too comfortable within our own worlds and our own zeitgeist and our own communities and our own environments to want growth, to want change, to want betterment for an overarching community of people. I think that people have gotten so accustomed to, as long as they're all right in their own bubble, then they don't give a fuck about nobody else. Myself included. I have been there. I have operated from that perspective of as long as I'm good, I don't give a fuck about what nobody else got going on, because nobody gives a fuck about me. But that doesn't help. Doesn't help. So, with that being said, I appreciate you guys visiting and or returning to Georgia, Carolina. If you like the video, share, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and do all of the YouTube-y things. Drop down in the comments and let me know how you feel. Let me know what you think. I'm sure that somebody is going to hear something that I'm saying and consider me off, especially when I put clips of this video on TikTok. I feel that me putting these individualized points on TikTok, because what I do is I cut a lot of these videos up into little soundbite points of 3 minutes or less, and I put them on TikTok, and sometimes I upload them here as separate videos when I feel like the point of that clip stands more relevant than just in the video that it comes from, and it's an overarching point that can be relevant to just anybody, right? I find that I get a lot of discourse on those videos on TikTok because people are only getting one point or one perspective or one angle of what I'm saying, and they don't see the overarching video. And I tell people in every caption, full video on my YouTube channel, right? But I have found that it's led me to have a lot of discussions about certain things because people only see one point, and it allows us to focus in on that point specifically and not have to break down the entire scope of my video. So it has pros and cons, whereas some people only focus on the negative of one point and they may not have necessarily seen another part of my video where I am rectifying that, or they only can focus on this, so we can only talk about this, and they don't have the opportunity to stretch out to different points in my video. We can only talk about this so we can have a real conversation about this specific issue and then move on to something else. So let me know what y'all think, and I'm always willing to engage in the conversations. Y'all can find me in the comments. Y'all know where I'm at. If you want to talk to me on social media, hit me on social media. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Georgia Carolina, spelled exactly the way that my channel is spelled, Georja, Carolina, like both states. My TikTok is Brian K. James. That's the name of my drag character. I may be changing it to Georgia Carolina before I put this video up, so if you can't find me under Brian K. James, it'll be under Georgia Carolina, just like the rest of my social medias. So I appreciate you guys for being here, and until the next one, peace. Goodbye. Mwah.